Good afternoon and welcome back to another GameMaker Studio 2 tutorial. Today we're going to be covering one of the most widely used systems in video games, the text box. More specifically, we're going to be looking at how to program a dynamic text box that draws the text over a period of time. Systems extremely similar to what I'm going to be demonstrating are used in, video games of all sorts, from Pokemon to Final Fantasy, just almost everywhere. You'll find text boxes of some kind. So our finished product for today is going to look a lot like what I'm going to show you right here. It's going to look just like this. So you're going to be able to, it's going to be drawn at the bottom fourth of the screen. You'll be able to customize the location, the speed, the colors, and the font very easily to fit whatever you might be working on or experimenting with. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. All right, so what I've got here is a brand new empty file that I've named Dynamic Text Box. And what I like about the text box that I've come up with for today is that it's all contained within one object. We only need one object to do it. It can be managed by external objects and whatever you're working on. It's super simple. So we're just going to call it the text box. You can really name it whatever's easiest for you to reference. It doesn't reference itself at all. So we're just going to get started right in the create event. So these are all the variables that we are going to need to just get started. So we're going to need to know the full text of what we're typing. We're going to need the string that will be typed. So the text is the bulk of it, it's your sentences, everything. The string will go, step by step and draw, character by character to create the nice effect that I showed you in the intro. After that, we're going to want the position that we're currently adding to the string. We're going to want the end of the string. Now, normally, a lot of these, including the text, the string, the position end, you'd normally just set it to 1. For when you create the object, you're going to want to set all of these through the creation code when you create this externally. That way it's fully customizable. You don't have to rely on it being predefined. You're not going to have a million text box objects in your project file. I mean, that would take up way too much room for how much you need. So now we're just going to set up the background color, which I'm just going to set it to be dark gray. It can be whatever you want. That's going to be what's behind the text. The border color, which is that color of that blue border that I had. I like blue with gray. And then the text color, which I'm going to make it white. And then you can customize it by font. So for this, I'm going to just go ahead and create an example font. In your own game, you're going to want to test around, see what works. I'm just going to do Arial size 30 regular because I know it fits well with the amount of space that I'm going to be working with in the GUI. So normally you'd have to play around with this, find out the size of text that works for you, and go from there. So from there, you can just close out of that and go right back into the create event, and we're going to set the font to what I just created. And then you can choose the thickness for the border. I'm going to choose 12. This all depends on how big you want it to be. Maybe you want a nice thick border, or you don't need a thick border because your text box isn't very large. Once again, all of these variables are able to be set through the creation code when that time comes. So here we want to just set these variables, which are going to control how fast or how slow the text is drawn. And this is essentially like a system similar to using alarms. You know, they'll built-in alarms that you can add. However, you have a little more control this way, which I prefer personally. And then we need to finish this off with a new page variable and a finished variable. These are our control variables. New page will come into play when you have capped out the space within the text box, but there's still more text to display. It's going to stop drawing it until you flip to the new page, essentially using a button of some sort, whether it's the enter key, spacebar. It could be anything. It just has to be an input of some kind. And then finished, when it's over, this will be flagged to true, which you can use to easily destroy the object by, you know, either once again pressing enter or space, or if you're using a controller, A, B, or any combination of buttons, really. So from there, that concludes the create event. Now we want to make the step event. And before we make the step event, actually, I think it would actually be easier to understand if we start in the draw GUI event, because the drawing of the text box is very, very simple compared to, you know, the step event. The step event is where the bulk of the code is going to be, all the complicated indexing and looking ahead to make sure we don't go out of the text box, but we also insert new line characters and whatnot. So the draw GUI is what's going to come next, and it's very straightforward how you think it would be. It's only really made the most complicated part is drawing the background and the border, which if you have a custom like sprite for the back of your text box, you literally just need to draw that sprite where you want it. But then you would need to set variables in the create event that, interesting. There we go, put that in there. So you would add variables of like the width of the text box and the location that you want to be drawing it. For us, we're just going to be drawing it based on the GUI, which we will gather ourselves. All right, so I'm going to start off here. We will, where am I typing? That's not where I want to be. All right, so we want to just localize the GUI width and height. So get GUI width and height, just to make it easier to reference later. So GUI width equals display get GUI width. So you don't want to rely on like your room width or your room height. It's just good. It's just better practice, in my opinion, to just actively get the GUI dimensions, because you might be rescaling your GUI, so it's technically, you know, your GUI is still 1920 by 1080, even though your window size is 1600 by 900. You know, you could have weird stuff like that. So once we get those, we are going to draw the backing and the border. So first we draw the back rectangle. So we want to set the color to be the back color, and then we just draw the rectangle, which is going to go from 0, and since I'm doing this in the bottom fourth, I'm going to do the GUI height times 3/4, and then it's going to go to the GUI width and down to the GUI height, and it is not an outline. From there, we're going to do the essentially a thick rectangle as the border, which is going to be comprised of 4 lines. So we're going to set the color to border color. Oh, and I see I have a typo on border thickness. I typed border thicknessa, We don't want that. Just thickness works. Obviously, you could call it whatever, but this way you won't confuse it with anything. So we're going to start, we're going to draw the line on the top. So what we want is for this, the line thickness, if we were to draw it at the top of the rectangle, it would stick out upwards and downwards thickness wise. So we actually want to shift it down half the thickness so it's all contained within this nice rectangle. So nothing leaks out, you know, it's a good consistent, takes up 1/4 of the bottom. So it's going to start at 0 and it's going to go to the GUI width. Now that is x2. So the y1, it's going to start at GUI height times 3/4, and then it's also going to be down the border thickness divided by 2, not 200. And then it will obviously stay at that height because we just want a horizontal line. Thickness divided by 2, and the width is going to be border thickness. So that is the top line. Now we're going to copy this and use that to draw the bottom thickness, the bottom border, which is going to go from, instead of it being GUI times 3/4, it's just the GUI height, and then we're going to subtract the border thickness. And then we want to draw the vertical lines on the side, so this one is going to be at the left side, so it's going to start from 0, and it's going to start at GUI height. It's not 0, it starts at border thickness divided by 2, because it would be 0 plus that, and then GUI height times 3/4. Yep, and then it stays at the border thickness divided by 2, and it goes all the way down to the GUI height, and the width is, of course, border thickness, as it is for all of these. And then the last one, very similar. Just copy it to make it easier. Instead of it being at border thickness, it's going to be at GUI width minus the border thickness divided by 2. That'll put it at the right hand side vertically. And that is the backing. So now we are going to, so the way I've set this up is the text is going to start in the upper left-hand corner of the text box and get drawn to the right, and then add new lines when needed. So we're going to then that's easy to draw because we're just drawing the str variable, because that's going to get updated based on the text that we want to draw. So we're going to set the font as well as the alignment. So draw set font. All this is very simple. It's going to be the passed in font, which in this case was just what I had made, font Arial size 30, just to be consistent. So then we're going to want to set the H align, and I just want this to be on the left, and then draw set V align, which is going to be FA top. And that's just to have it draw from the top left, and then we can set the color to be the text color. And then the actual location we're going to draw the text, draw the text is going to be the border thickness, and I'm going to do another half the border thickness, so there's a little bit of space. It doesn't just start where the border ends, so I'm going to do times 3/2. Personal preference. You can always play around with this and find numbers that work for you. So the GUI height is, of course, at it just starts GUI height, and then we're going to add on the another border thickness times 3/2, and the string that we show is just str, and that's the drawing. That's very simple. The step event, which is what we're going to go into next, is going to be a little more intense, I guess you could say. So first, the way this is counting down, It's going to subtract 1 from the text alarm set every frame. And when it hits 1, it's going to trigger, because normally it's the way I'm going to set it up. I have my reasons. It's a little complicated. It makes more sense logically the way I'll do it. It doesn't look logical. It doesn't make sense. Normally you'd think, oh, I'll check when the text alarm equals 0, but when you set the alarm to 2, you'd think it's going to happen 30 times in 60 frames. Whereas if you do it this way in reality, it might actually just happen. It'll happen 20 times. It'll happen every 3 frames. So the way I did it just seemed like a surefire way. You can always play around with the text alarm and the rate and everything. So the text alarm is going to be what actually counts down. The text rate is how many characters we add at the end of that alarm. So how many more characters we draw. So initially we're just going to say text alarm minus minus. That's so that it sets to 0, because there's a case where we don't want anything to happen. We just want it to be idle. So as long as it stays 0, nothing will trigger at all. So first we want to check for the ending. We're going to see if we're near the end. So we're going to say if our position is less than or equal to the position end. We're going to make sure that we should still be adding something. And then we're going to check if our text rate would surpass the position end, because we might draw random characters that we don't want. If the string length is 400 and our text rate is an odd number like 3, you might end up at 402 instead of 400, and you might end up drawing weird characters on accident. So we're just gonna check if position end minus position is less than text rate, because that would mean we need to just shorten the text rate so it equals position end minus the position. And then the way strings work, they start at 1, not 0, so we actually need to add another another 1 to this text rate. It's the way the math works out. So just to make checking widths and height easier, we are going to pull in the GUI width again and the GUI height. Display get GUI width, and then we're going to pull in the height. And that's just for checking. So now we're going to check. Oops. Now we want to check the characters we are adding for any spaces. So what we add on is going to be, we're going to copy the original text, right, from our position, and the number that we're going to add is the text rate. So we want to check if there's any spaces here. And because if there aren't, so the way this works is, I should explain that. The way this works is it's going to be like a double look ahead. I'll explain it down here. It'll be super simple. So if you had a sentence like the brown fox jumped blah blah blah, right? And you took and you had the current string is th, and we're going to add on e space. It's going to check for this space, right? If there's a space, we're going to check to make sure the next word, in this case brown, will fit on this line. If it does not fit on this line, we will replace this space with a new line. So that way the next line will start and it'll fit in the text box. We check the next word. If the next word does fit, doesn't go outside the bounds of our text box, then we leave it as it is. And if there's no space at all, we assume we've calculated for this word that we're on, and it should fit. That is how we're going to be calculating this, which sounds really simple, but it's a little more technical than that when you get into it. So we're just going to check the string count. We're going to check for spaces in add. And if that is 0, we're good. We can just do string plus equals add it on, adjust the position by the text rate, and then reset the text alarm to be text alarm set. And that's the easiest case. Now the other case is that we need to get the index of the space character in the addendum. Add is going to be short for addendum. It's what we're adding on to the end. So we're going to get that. So we're going to call it the space index. Very plain and simple. We're going to get that from the string position of the space within the add. Super simple. And then what we want to do is we want to change the add. So if our add was normally the end of a word and the end of a word and then a space and then some other text, right? If we were adding 5 characters, we want to add this E so that our new add has the space at the beginning. And that just has to do with then indexing and knowing if we can insert the new line, everything. So we check, we're going to add everything before the space to the string while removing it from the addendum, right? Which is a little finicky. So we say string plus equals string copy. This part is simple. We're going to copy the add from 1 until space index, and we're going to do -1, and that is just simply because strings start at 1. If it started at 0, space index would make sense, and this is a count. So if the space is at the beginning, this count will be 0, and we won't copy anything, which is the desired behavior. Now we're going to change, add is going to copy itself from the space, starting at the space index to the length of the add minus the space index plus 1, because the count is going to be 1 less than when you subtract it, or it's going to be 1 more because the indexing for string starts at 1. I think that's the case. I did many examples on a whiteboard to make sure the indices line up and the code runs. So I did something right. So now we want to get the next space character and add, and the next next addendum, like what the addendum would be, and that'll be our working string that we're going to check for widths and heights with. So we're going to say var next space index equals, and we're going to say string position, and we're going to use the extended one. So we're going to check for the space because we want to choose when we're starting, because we want to start at the position plus the text rate. Now, normally, I used to have this as the space index, but that doesn't work. Your text will break if you have an example, say add equals, if there's a space, a short word, and then another space, it will get this one. And then when you start the next word, it might not have any spaces in it, because if the next thing is just an apple, right, and it's going to get the next 4, and it's going to add them on regardless of the width and height, which could stretch outside the bounding box. It's very technical. And then so the next add is going to equal string copy the text from the position plus space index -1. So we're going to start from our position plus where the space index is -1. So we're actually including the space indices. I don't like them for strings. And then it's going to go to the count is going to be next space index minus position. That's just how that works out. And then we say our working string equals string plus next add. This is just because we don't want to modify the string. We don't want to actually modify the string, and we don't want to change add, because this add is still what we should be adding based on the text rate. So that gives us a working string that we can check widths and heights for. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the font just to make sure, just to be safe, to make sure that the string width and string height are calculated using the proper font. Because if the font wasn't set yet, which it should be, because I believe draw GUI, the draw event happens before the step event, so it should be set. But just in case it's not, we're going to draw set the font just to double check, and then we're going to get we're going to localize the string width of the working string, and we're going to localize the height of the working string, and then we can check horizontal spacing. Right, so simple if statement. If the width is greater than the GUI width minus 3 times the border thickness, because that's where, essentially, that's where our text should end. If we're starting at 3/2 the border thickness, we're going to have 2 buffers that are 3/2 the border thickness, and 3/2 times 2 is 3. So we want 3 times the border thickness. So we check that. So if the width is in fact greater than so this means we're going out of bounds. Now we check the height. So we want to say if the height is greater than the GUI height, and now we're working with 1/4. It's 3/4 down, but it's only 1/4. That minus 3 times the border thickness. So if the height is about to go outside the boundary, and not about to, it means it's going to go with the next word that we're not adding now, because we're looking ahead. What we want to do is we want to set the position to plus equal the space index, and then we want to set new page equal to true, because we don't want anything else to happen. We want it needs to stop drawing right now, and we don't want to. And the reason why I added everything before the space, which I kind of forgot about until now, but it makes sense, is because you don't want to draw half a word at the end. If you drew the entire add, and the add was, for example, down here, if it was, for example, a space and then part of a word instead of the rest of it was there, or that, because it would spell there, blah, 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 right? We don't want to draw half of the word there and then leave the RE for the new line. So I cut it off before this space, whether there's text there or not. That's just to keep, it makes it more readable. And so we set new page equal to true. And we'll handle new page later. It's very simple to handle. So otherwise, it means we can add a new line, which is good. So we want to replace the add because it means we are going to be adding something. So add is going to equal string replace, and we want to replace within add itself. We're going to replace the space with a new line character, and this is I don't even know the button combination that I pushed to do that so quickly. So that's gonna replace the space with a new line, of course, but that's good because it doesn't change the length of text. Otherwise, we would have to update the string length for text, which would be very problematic because we don't update text, but we'd be adding a space to our working string. So we want to keep the length the same. And of course, we're going to go ahead and add that to the string str. And then we set position plus equals text rate, just like normal. And then reset the text alarm to be text alarm set. All right, and that works great. And then the other case where if our width, it's not going to go out of bounds horizontally, that is, coming back to this. So if it's less than our allotted space, we're going to just add it like normally, how you would normally add it, and then position plus equals text rate. Yes, that is right. And then reset the text alarm to text alarm set. So that is probably the second simplest case because it means we're just adding it. We're adding it as if there wasn't a space there. But we had to check the space because of the look ahead. And then we want to put right here, because this is for the position end. So if we're at the position end, we're going to say else finished equals true, because if and we also don't reset the text alarm, so it stays 0, so this won't get ran again. So if it's less than or equal to, so if it's greater than position end, that means, oh shoot, we've overshot it, don't draw anything, we're finished. So that's the bulk of it. That'll parse through everything just fine. And then we've got some other fancy schmancy stuff. So I think, yeah, I'll add the important stuff. So of course we want to count down the alarm. So we want to say if text alarm is greater than 1, right? Text alarm minus minus. We just want to count down, right, every step. So now we're going to handle if new page is true, right? So if new page, and this will end this part. In the next part, I'll go over another feature. If you bear with me, let me finish this real quick. So if new page and keyboard check pressed, and I'm just going to use VK. I'm just going to use the enter key, just because I don't have a controller hooked up. It's just, you could pick arbitrary. And if you wanted to do more than one key, I could say, let's close this and do, if we press enter or copy that, paste it, or we did VK space, right? So you could do multiple buttons if you have that set up. And I need another parenthesis. So if we do this, what we would do is we reset the working string, right? Because we don't want anything. It's a new page, so it's a fresh start. We reset the text alarm to equal the text alarm set. And then we set new page equal to false. It is that simple. That'll start that. So right there, if we go set up our room and just test this And I pray it works. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to change this to 1600 by 900 just because I know it looks good with this font. Normally, obviously, you just play around with it until you think it looks good. So we're going to run this and we're going to see how this looks. Of course, I just realized it's not going to draw anything because I don't have anything in the text. So I'm just going to copy over a big long thing that I have in my completed file. I believe it starts there. So just have this big long string, which is how you want to format it. And that makes it easier for you because you don't have to worry about new lines or anything, and it'll get drawn just fine. Hopefully this works. If it doesn't, I'll fix it before I end this video. So right now, drawing the text, excellent. It goes along. I could have made it draw a little faster for this example. And so we see we've run into the problem of it's not checking the height properly. So I'm going to debug that really quick, and I'm going to tell you what went wrong. Okay, I have figured out what went wrong. Hard cut there. So I ran into this problem when I was making this. When you have the new line right there at the end with no characters after, even no characters at all, it doesn't properly calculate the height. It thinks, because technically there's nothing being drawn below it, it still fits in the height. So when we're working with the height, we want to add on any character. So, oh, and our working length, our working height doesn't include the proper height. Obviously, I forgot that as well. We want to add on a new line and a space because the working string isn't factoring in the next line down. It's just working on the current height. So that wouldn't work anyway. So now I believe it'll run properly. So as we can see running it, it is drawing it at a nice smooth space. It is drawing the dialogue that I have prescribed, and it should stop right here at the end. And we'll see, oh, but there's more. We know there's more text. So you could always add something when there's a new line. You could add something to the end of the working string, like a dot dot dot, because that should normally fit. It might not fit if you have this case. So you could maybe draw, you could just draw a little symbol down there within the draw GUI. But if we hit enter or space, usually I hit enter, I'll hit space. It moves on to the next page of text, starting the next whole word. Everything goes smoothly. It looks beautiful. Now, what you'll notice from the completed file that we haven't covered yet, and I'll cover that in the next video, is the same thing. But if I hit enter early, it automatically finishes the text. So that is a whole nother section of code that we'll have to add. And I think I'll save that for next time. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up if you found it helpful. Any comments or questions, I'll be happy to take in the comments. But I do ask, just make them detailed. It makes it easier for me to respond, so I'll know what you're actually asking me. So I will catch you next time.